Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michael Childers, one of the professors here at the UW-Madison School for Workers, and I'm the host this month of our monthly on Wednesday Labor Forward program, and I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew Hutchinson, who is a business manager for the Laborers Union, LiUNA, and I guess I won't give you a big introduction. I'll let you go ahead and explain a little bit more about how you're situated because when people think of LiUNA, a lot of times they think of, you know, construction. So I'll,
Right,
I'll let you
right.
explain kind of what. Andrew was here to share the results of a major campaign that he had been working on over the last year. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name's Andrew. I'm the rep in mid-Missouri. So it's a town, Columbia, Missouri. It's a big university town. Mizzou is there. And we represent public sector workers, which is different for a laborers local. So the laborers local 955, let's say about a third of our members are your traditional construction hiring hall folks. And then the rest of them are a combination of some really small private sector shops. We have sheetrock delivery guys. We've got some feed mills that do agricultural work. But the majority is public sector. So we represent university and city workers. And what I'm talking about today is we just finished our contract with the City of Columbia, which it's their Public Works and Utilities department, and we ran a pretty long campaign, took about a year, and we just finalized some pretty significant working condition changes, contract changes, and raises, of course.
Of course. And I think that's a great place to start in that. Yeah, we're focused on this particular bargaining that you guys went through. And if you could, for people who maybe aren't as familiar, because again, public sector law differs state by state. If you wanted to explain a little bit, like right to work, non-right to work, that kind of thing, just sort of the history of the bargaining unit, how you guys were situated, and what it looked like as you were starting to get ready, as you saw on the calendar, oh, we're going to have to get into bargaining with the city here pretty soon.
Yeah, so the history of this area is that it used to be called Local 45. In fact, the old story, which, every local has their old mythology, and the mythology of this local, because we don't have any great records or anything, just some random scrapbooks, is that the City of Columbia unit was actually formed. Local 45 represented university workers and had done a lot of work there. Actually, some pretty intense strikes in the late 60s. Solid waste workers just sat down one day and said, we're not working until we have a union. And this is old, it's probably not true, but it's a credit to what people think is the old actions of the union, and still important. But apparently the city called Local 45 and said, can you come talk to these guys? They showed up and they said, all right, this will do. And they went back to work. And that kind of started this unit. So when I got hired 3 years ago, I think it was about three or 4 years ago, this unit had maybe 4 stewards, 5 stewards, 300 union eligibles. So it's open shop. So Missouri has been open shop since way before Janus versus AFSCME. We're not a right to work state, but the public sector has been open shop forever. We had like 40 dues paying members out of like 300. And this was typical across all of the units that were under this local. So every year it's gone up, it's gone up, it's gone up. And at the conclusion of this campaign, we now have 130 out of 240 union eligibles. And I'll get into this later, are adding another whole department to our bargaining unit. But what we did to prepare is we passed out bargaining surveys, which, we struggled with getting people to fill out. But the individual who was recently elected chief steward, who was just a mechanic steward in the past, he came to me and, me being a stressed, union staffer that I can't do everything that I want to do. He says, I think what we need to do is every single department needs to host their own meeting way before negotiations, and we need to build our list of proposals. I said, if you can run the meetings, man, great. And that's what he did. We kind of split it half and half. He took some, we took others, and we got really clear with folks about, asking for whatever they wanted. And some of the big things that people wanted was an end to pre-employment drug testing, some pretty significant wage increases. One of the big hot potato items is our solid waste workers. They were having a significantly hard time hiring folks. So what the city did is that they gave them what's called an ad pay, which means when you're actually at work, you receive this ad pay. When you're actually picking up the trash and putting it in the truck, you receive the ad pay. If you take sick time, if you take vacation time, if you are late, if you happen to not get to throw trash that day because they have you doing other stuff, you don't get the ad pay. Which if it's $1 or $2, whatever. But this was a $7.50 increase, and their base pay was $17 an hour. So you had guys who would come in here and think, oh, wow, I'm making, $24 an hour starting. And then they would take any sick time or any vacation time and watch their checks just evaporate. And the city had said at the start of bargaining, we want to get rid of the ad pay system. And they would refuse to clarify how. We didn't know what it would look like for base pay. We had no idea. So there was a lot of fear of the members of, well, if we get rid of ad pay and it doesn't go into the base, then what have we done? But yeah, you said mostly just preparation, right?
Well, sure.
Yeah,
And
so,
again, I think that was a great summary. And like you said, kind of lead up, explaining where you were at, and then the way you guys chose to sort of approach it, getting more members involved, getting more information from the members, and also letting you do a little more level setting and expectations with members about, okay, yeah, we're going to make our list, and then understand that, yeah, everybody, it sounds like, had some apprehension about, yeah, literally you're talking about losing another minimum wage job on days where you're not able to do your primary duty. That's just
yeah.
amazing to me. But it's interesting that the employer too recognized that this is kind of untenable. We need to figure out something. So yeah, if you want to talk about, so then what happened once you guys got to the table, and what did you guys have to do to try to get to the finish line?
Yeah, our negotiating committee was elected by each department. They sent 1 or 2 people. We made sure to pass out ballots in shop. That's the only way we could get them to weigh in. And when we got to the table, the other big thing I forgot to mention, and this was actually the biggest, was the inclusion of a step scale. Anyone with a union background will know, like, probably have some familiarity with the step scale. Every year you get a small incremental raise. Maybe you borrowed on cost of living as well. The city's financial setup was, there was a range, and after 5 years, you would get moved to the middle of the range, and every other raise before and after was just cost of living adjustments. And it was only if you were in that job title for 5 years. So a lot of folks had this frustration about the city would just arbitrarily change your job title, which would then reset you, and you wouldn't get a raise or anything. They would just change it. And of course, the city says that never happened, which you can guess how the members feel about it. But when we got to the table, the city started by saying, absolutely no step scale. We refused to talk about it. The end. And the firefighters union had actually won a step scale in the past. But the way that they had won it was they said, hey, you're going to move us into the step scale, and we're not even going to touch a cost of living raise this year. So they put all their eggs in the basket of, we need to fix wage compression now, and it'll pay off in 5 years. They did this, not in the middle of horrifying increasing inflation. So we knew that wasn't really an option for us.
Right.
But yeah, the city basically said no to everything. No. So then we started getting creative. We started doing direct actions, and we started doing press-facing work. And in fact, we actually, before we even got to the table, we did a rally in January. So it was like mid-January, super cold, and we got like 120 community members and workers, some of them who had only been members for a couple of months, some of them who weren't even members yet, to stand out in the freezing cold and talk about no cuts to bus routes, which were also on the table, and also essential pay for essential workers. And we got immediately started some community support around that campaign.
Awesome. So that actually, you're saying, happened right as a prelude to the formal negotiations, which apparently did not prevent them from just coming and saying no, no, no. So if you want to get into it, I mean, in terms of what happened then, and how did you guys proceed? How were you able to, move, or were you able to move, and what ended up happening?
Yeah, so I mean, we kept going back and forth, and something I want to be wary of is that, or be like clear about, I guess I should say, is that the city actually has an ordinance that says negotiations are closed and the union can't speak to the public about it. So they were immediately upset that we had done this pre-negotiations rally. And they assumed, okay, well, once we're in negotiations, you guys won't talk to the public. So we continued to. We did, email campaigns to council members. We had done in districts with city council members before negotiations had even started, to let them know what our bargaining priorities were. We had, had many years of helping these folks get into office. So we had already had close relationships with them. And we did multiple rallies. And then we did a big one, which was a big social media action where we had workers take selfies and tag the city, and it got picked up by a lot of folks talking about, all the overtime they work and how the city won't do X, Y, and Z. And the really big thing was folks saying, my name's John Smith. I've been plowing snow for the city for 20 years. Under the city's current proposal, I'm going to make 10 cents more than a 19-year-old who this is his first job out of high school. That's what the city thinks about my loyalty and dedication. And they were furious. And we were still getting to a point where they had given us the step scale. They were moving on pre-employment drug testing. But the last thing that we needed was to address that compression issue. And the city kept saying, we're going to talk about wage compression next year. It's not on the table right now. And we got to the point where we said, you don't need to fix it, but we need to know that you're serious about fixing it. So you got to give us something. And the city straight up said, we're not doing it. Absolutely not. So we pulled out the big guns and we said, okay, we are going to do a rally. No, that's not what we said. We said, we're going to do a picket. And we went to city council members and we said, do you know what to do with a picket line? And they said, well, you're not supposed to cross it. And we said, yeah, we're going to do it right before a city council meeting. It means you would have to walk across our picket line. And you should understand, if you walk across our picket line, what that means for you in the future. That was not received well by the city. They were fiercely scared. And to be honest, we got to a point where there's 7 members on city council and 4 for quorum. Mayor was absent, so we only needed 3 to not cross. And we had 2 for sure, and then we had 2 maybes. And the city knew that we were very close to having it, and we knew that we were close, but we weren't positive. And the city came to us and they said, we'll give you this amount for these workers on wage compression. And so we called it off. We are the only bargaining unit at the city that got anything for wage compression last year. And it's, an extra step for people with 8 years of service in one position, which was like 30 people. But I mean, it was the best that we could get. And we considered a success because we also got clarity on the people that stood with us and council-wise, and the people who, when stuff got tense, walked away and said, I don't know what I'm going to do on that day. And it gets us really clear, and it's actually sparked a lot of internal work. We've recently formed a political committee that's building our own political platform and getting really clear on what is the accountability we do with electeds when we knock 4,000 doors for them in mid-Missouri, and then they screw us.
Wow. So it sounds like, and I mean, you talked about several of the games. Can you do you want to summarize in total? So yeah, you got some movement on the wage compression issue just by your 11th hour, sort of this is what's about to happen unless you guys come to the table with something better. But do you want to summarize what all the gains that you guys were able to achieve?
Yeah. So the raises that we got, the city had done this massive compensation study, so they wanted to move everyone to the new minimum of their position, which in some cases was an incredible raise. What we made sure to do was the city dangled year raises in front of us, and actually said during negotiations, we'll give you a raise right now if you just stop bargaining, just to get it. And I, straight up asked the negotiator, I was like, oh, so you're saying it's not worth talking about our issues? We should just take the 20 cents that you're offering us? And he's like, well, I didn't say that, Andrew, but every day that you bargain is money not in your members' pockets. And I was like, okay, well, that's very clear. But so we got people to the new minimum, and then we got 3 steps, which is about a little over 6% on top of the new minimum. So in some cases, that was for the wastewater operators, those guys got like $15,000 raises that we were able to negotiate, which was life-changing for a lot of them. So we got that. We got an end to pre-employment drug testing for all non-CDL holding positions, for weed, that is, not 5-panel across the board, but we got it for marijuana, which was passed recreationally last year, but the city was still using that as a bar to employment, which is fascinating. We got ad pay. What we did with ad pay is that pay went directly into the base. So they didn't get, and they got some steps as well. So they didn't get the compression incentive, but most of those guys saw their base pay increase like $7 an hour, and they were still moving to a new minimum as well. So I watched some new hires go from $17 an hour to $27 an hour with the contract. So that was huge. So, and the step scale. And we also won in the contract language around the DOT language around pre-tripping. But really what we won is we had a lot of safety concerns where members felt like supervisors, when trucks are not, brakes are messed up or the tires are messed up or the trash has to get picked up, supervisors would they wouldn't say you need to drive this truck, but they would strongly imply it. And we got it in the contract that workers have the right to refuse to drive unsafe trucks, which the city said, oh, of course they do. And we were like, well, these cases. And they're like, well, that's not exactly what happened, but we will agree to it. The things we did not get, we wanted to make it so that if you pop dirty on randoms for marijuana, that you would be suspended and then demoted instead of instantly terminated. We did not win that. We did not win binding arbitration, which is what we really wanted for the grievance procedure. But I will say that and our meticulous note-taking and attacks on how awful the grievance procedure is created enough distrust of city government that city council was able to push the manager in the right direction and give us what we needed. And then we go into a wage opener next year. And then the final thing that's not contract related is our work was public enough and far reaching enough and different from the past, because we're kind of dealing with a local that did this in a service oriented way where they just hoped that the guy in my position would do a really good job negotiating a contract, that we actually had another department take it upon themselves to sign cards, and we just won voluntary recognition on Monday And it's like a 27-person department of water distribution workers who are joining our bargaining unit.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. I guess it just, again, it's a testament to the work that your bargaining unit did to win a good contract for those members, and to the extent that other people looked around and said, that's interesting. How can we be a part of this as well? So that's congratulations to all of you.
Yeah, I mean, the most fascinating thing about those workers is they, on average, like make more than our members. So it's not like it's a department that doesn't make good money that's looking at us now making good money and it's like, okay, well, we want to hop on that train. It really came down to they saw that you could, ask for something and get it. And they were like, oh, well, we want to be a part of that. And we created a culture where they didn't approach us and say, or they did approach us and say, hey, can you help us? And we had a steward network that was able to coach them and say, like, no, but you can help yourself. And here's the tools to do it. And here's the tools to join our movement. But I mean, it's a bizarre thing when I have stewards who tell me that, their method of organizing is to not baby people and just be really clear about what's going on and how they can fix it. And if they just keep getting badgered with phone calls, they say, like, man, I can't waste my time on you. I've got other stuff to do. Which, as an organizer, I'm like, that's horrible. I hate that. But as, coworkers, they were able to understand the culture that they're operating in and create a pretty strong new department for our local.
Right. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, and kudos to them who were told, look, this is, if you want to do this, you can absolutely do it, and it's up to you. And here's how you do it. And again, it sounds like, and they went out and they did it. So
yeah.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes today. Is there anything else that you'd want to share regarding what you learned, or sort of how this, the ripples that have come from this have spread out? You already shared one, but I'm curious, if there was anything else that we didn't cover that you'd want to mention.
I mean, I think the big highlight is, especially in open shops, we can't think about contract campaigns without thinking about organizing, whether that's external or internal, and that the actions that you're doing and the conversations that you're having are not just to secure that win, but it's to adjust the culture of your local, and it's to grow the membership. And, there's a certain level of, I think we have 16 stewards at the city of Columbia now who have all been elected by their coworkers, and the grand majority of them have been members for less than a year and a half. So, like, there is a way to rebuild in open shop, and I, will say, I honestly think when you have to have a conversation with every single person, that you can get a lot more out of your membership if you're having those conversations correctly. So I think instead of just lamenting open shop organizing and saying, well, it is what it is, we're just going to do the best that we can, like, it's actually the opportunity to have these conversations and get really clear on what they're a part of. And yeah, that's it.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's some brilliant insights. Really appreciate you sharing. And once again, thanks so much for being able to come on and share your experiences. We're very grateful.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Hope to be back soon.